Imagine opening your eyes for the first time, and the first sky you ever see is not blue. There is no sunrise outside the window. There is no wind moving through trees. There is no ocean, no mountain, no moon hanging above a quiet street. There is only a ceiling, a low vibration in the floor, recycled air in your lungs, and beyond the hull, a darkness so large that every person you know was born inside the same machine. For a child born on a starship, Earth is not home. Earth is a story. It is a picture on a wall, a lesson in a classroom, a place adults mention with a strange sadness in their voices. The child may learn that rivers once ran under open clouds, that people once stood outside without pressure suits, that rain fell from the sky without being collected by filters. But to them, those things may feel less real than the humming pipes behind their sleeping room. And that is where the terrifying part begins. Because a generation ship is not just a spacecraft. It is a moving world. It must carry bodies, food, water, air, medicine, laws, language, memory, childhood, old age, conflict, hope, and the entire fragile chain of human life across distances so large that the first crew may never see the planet they are trying to reach. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy calm journeys through the deepest questions in space. Like the video if you want more long space documentaries like this. And write a comment telling us where you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. Somewhere on Earth, someone else may be listening under a completely different sky. Tonight, you are watching the Just About Space channel, talking about what happens when humans are born on a starship. And the story begins with a simple problem. A starship built for one lifetime is already difficult. A starship built for many lifetimes is something else entirely. When people imagine interstellar travel, they often picture speed, a bright engine, a narrow ship crossing the black, a target star ahead, a crew asleep in shining chambers, waking up when the destination fills the window. That version is clean. It avoids the hardest question by pretending the journey can be skipped. But the nearest stars are not close in any human sense. Even Proxima Centauri, the closest known star to the Sun, is more than 4 light-years away. Light itself takes over 4 years to cross that gap. A spacecraft moving at speeds we can build today would take far longer than a human lifetime. Even a future vessel moving much faster than any probe we have ever launched might still need decades, centuries, or more, depending on how it accelerates, slows down, and survives. That is why the idea of a generation ship exists. Instead of asking one crew to make the entire journey, the ship becomes the birthplace of new crews. Parents leave the solar system. Their children inherit the voyage. Their grandchildren maintain the systems. Their descendants may be the ones who finally see another star grow brighter. On paper, this sounds like a solution. In reality, it moves the problem from engines into civilization. A normal spacecraft can be judged by whether it completes a mission. A generation ship must be judged by whether it can keep a society alive long enough for the mission to still mean something. It cannot simply avoid breaking. It has to remain understandable. It has to remain repairable. It has to remain fair enough, healthy enough, stable enough, and hopeful enough that people born inside it do not decide the destination is no longer worth obeying. A child born aboard such a ship would not be a passenger in the usual sense. They did not sign up. They did not choose the mission, the route, the architecture, the leaders, the destination planet, or the risk. They are born into a contract written before their birth by people who may already be dead. That single fact changes the whole idea of interstellar travel. The Starship stops being only an engineering project and becomes a moral problem moving through space. The first generation boards with memory. They remember natural gravity. They remember weather. They remember the smell of soil after rain, even if they try not to talk about it too often. They know what it means for a horizon to be far away. They can compare the ship to Earth and understand what has been lost. The second generation grows up inside the comparison. They hear about Earth from people who have seen it. They may feel pride in the mission, but also resentment. They may ask why their lives had to be spent inside rotating drums and narrow corridors, because their grandparents wanted another star. The third generation is different. Earth becomes inherited memory. The pain becomes thinner, but the strangeness grows deeper. These people may no longer miss the smell of forests because they have never smelled one. They may not dream of walking under clouds, unless the ship teaches them how to imagine clouds. The original destination may become less like a promise and more like an old command. By the 10th generation, the question may no longer be, can we reach the star? It may be, why are we still going? That is the first terrifying reality of being born on a starship. The mission has to survive inside minds that never saw the beginning, and every practical system on the ship has to survive beside it. Start with gravity. Human beings are built for Earth, and every generation born away from Earth would carry that fact in their bones. On the International Space Station, astronauts work constantly to protect their muscles and bones because microgravity weakens the body. Exercise machines help, but they do not make space into Earth. For a few months, the body can adapt. For a lifetime, and for childhood, pregnancy, birth, growth, and aging, the question becomes much more serious. A starship designed for generations probably cannot rely on zero gravity. It would need artificial gravity, or something close to it. The most realistic idea is rotation. Spin part of the ship, and the floor can push outward against the feet of the people inside. A rotating habitat could create a feeling similar to weight. If it is large enough and turns slowly enough, people might walk, sleep, cook, exercise, and grow more normally than they could in freefall. But rotation creates its own problems. If the habitat is too small, the spin may make people dizzy. Head movements could feel strange. Fluids in the inner ear may send signals the brain does not expect. Children might adapt better than adults, but that also raises another question. Would they adapt so well that Earth-like gravity later feels wrong? A child born inside a rotating starship would learn gravity as an engineered condition, not as a natural fact. Gravity would be something produced by structure, speed, and maintenance. If bearings fail, if motors stop, if the rotating section loses balance, if vibration grows, the weight under every foot changes. A playground, a clinic, a school, and a farm are not just rooms. They are parts of a spinning machine that must never be allowed to fail too badly. Even if a system works, it may not perfectly match Earth. A ship might choose lower gravity to reduce structural stress. It might create half-Earth gravity, or Mars-like gravity, or different levels in different rings. Then, the first Starship children grow up with bodies shaped by compromise. Their bones, hearts, muscles, blood pressure, balance, and birth development may all be influenced by a gravity level chosen by engineers long before they were born. If the destination is an exoplanet with stronger gravity, weaker gravity, or no suitable surface at all, those bodies may not be ready. That means the ship must decide what kind of human it is trying to preserve. A person adapted to Earth? A person adapted to the ship? Or a person adapted to a planet no one has ever walked on? This is not abstract. If a child grows up in lower gravity, the body may not build the same strength it would on Earth. If they later need to land on a planet with Earth-like gravity, their first steps could feel crushing. If they grow in artificial gravity that is close to Earth, the ship needs more mass Stronger structures, more energy, more safety systems, and more engineering margin. Every solution has a cost. And on a Starship, cost is not measured only in money. It is measured in mass that must be launched, energy that must be stored, parts that must last, and risk carried by every unborn person aboard. Then comes reproduction. This is the part of generation ships that fiction often moves through quickly, because it is uncomfortable. It is easier to show families eating in a clean white habitat than to ask what it means to plan births on a closed spacecraft. But a ship that lasts centuries cannot treat birth as a private issue only. Population is life support. Too few people, and the society may lose skills, genetic diversity, social stability, and the ability to maintain complex systems. Too many people, and the ship runs out of food, water, air capacity, living space, medicine, or political patience. A generation ship has a carrying capacity in the most literal sense. Every new person is a life, but also a long-term demand on oxygen, calories, education, medical care, and habitat volume. On Earth, a population can spread, trade, migrate, expand cities, import food, or suffer through shortages across large regions. On a Starship, there is no outside market. There is no neighboring country with extra grain. There is no wilderness to move into. The ship is the entire economy. If birth rates rise too quickly, the danger may not be visible at first. A few extra children do not destroy a vessel. But over decades, the curve changes everything. More classrooms, more food, more waste, more medical cases, more social tension, more demand for space in a place where space cannot simply be built from nothing. If birth rates fall too low, another danger appears. The crew ages, repairs become harder, young people inherit too many roles. A single accident can erase a rare skill. The ship may have manuals and training programs, but manuals do not replace experience. The person who knows the old oxygen scrubbers by sound, the person who understands why one algae tank always runs hot, the person who remembers a repair workaround from 30 years ago. Those people matter. A generation ship would need population planning. And population planning inside a sealed spacecraft becomes ethically dangerous very quickly. Who decides how many children can be born? Who decides when? What happens if someone refuses? What happens if a couple wants a child during a resource shortage? What happens if the ship needs more engineers, but fewer births were allowed 20 years earlier? What happens if genetic screening becomes policy, not choice? The terrifying part is not that these questions are impossible to answer. It is that the ship cannot avoid answering them. Silence becomes a policy. Delay becomes a policy. Freedom without planning becomes a policy. Strict control becomes a policy. Every path shapes the lives of people who never agreed to be part of the experiment. The first babies born aboard would be celebrated. They would be proof that humanity can continue away from Earth. But behind the celebration, doctors would be watching everything. Pregnancy in a Starship environment would be one of the most important unknowns. Even if artificial gravity works well, the ship is not Earth. Radiation is different. Microbes are different. Diet is controlled. Stress is constant. Medical options are limited. Emergency evacuation does not exist. On Earth, a difficult birth can require a team, blood supplies, surgical equipment, intensive care, specialists, and rapid transport. On a Starship, the hospital is whatever the ship can carry and maintain. If a newborn needs a rare treatment, there is no larger hospital down the road. If a mother develops a complication, there is no helicopter, no specialist from another city, no shipment arriving tomorrow. The medical system must be ready not just for exploration medicine, but for an entire human lifespan. Birth, childhood illness, injuries, infections, dental care, chronic disease, disability, mental health, aging, surgery, and death all happen inside the ship. Medicine cannot be treated as emergency equipment. It has to be an ecosystem of knowledge, tools, drugs, diagnostics, sterile spaces, replacement parts, and trained people. And every medicine has a shelf life. Drugs degrade, seals fail, sensors drift, surgical tools wear, imaging machines break, sterilizers need energy, replacement parts become precious. A machine that was ordinary on Earth can become sacred after 3 generations, if it is the last one that works. A child born on a starship would grow up in a world where health is never separated from maintenance. A fever is not just a fever. It is a question about air circulation, microbial control, quarantine, medical stock, immune systems, and whether a small infection can move through a closed population. A broken arm is not only pain. It is calcium, gravity, exercise, imaging, splints, rehab, and the need to return someone to useful life in a society with no spare people. There is also radiation. Outside Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere, space radiation becomes one of the great enemies of long-duration travel. A generation ship would need shielding. That shielding might be water, fuel, waste, regolith if collected, dense materials, magnetic concepts, or simply mass placed between people and deep space. But mass is expensive. Every kilogram added to protect life makes the ship harder to accelerate and slow down. Radiation is especially serious for children. Growing tissues divide quickly. Development is delicate. A starship nursery cannot be placed casually near the hull. Schools, sleeping areas, medical bays, and farms may need to be deep inside the most protected zones. During solar storms, if the ship is still near a star, people might retreat into storm shelters. In interstellar space, the background radiation environment continues for the entire journey. This changes architecture. A starship is not a tube with rooms. It is a layered survival object. The outer zones may hold tanks, machinery, shielding, storage, spare parts, maybe fuel. The middle zones may hold farms, workshops, water reservoirs, and maintenance corridors. The safest core may hold children, medical rooms, command spaces, and emergency shelters. The layout itself becomes a statement about what the society values most. Then, there is air. On Earth, oxygen feels free because plants, oceans, atmosphere, and geological cycles do work too large for us to notice each moment. On a starship, oxygen is manufactured, recovered, monitored, moved, scrubbed, and protected. Carbon dioxide cannot simply drift away. Trace contaminants cannot be ignored. Humidity matters. Mold matters. Fire risk matters. The smell of the air may become one of the most honest measures of whether the ship is healthy. A child born there would never take air for granted. They might learn in school how carbon dioxide scrubbers work before they learn ancient geography. They might know why certain doors close during pressure tests. They might understand why a storage room cannot be opened without logging the change in airflow. The invisible systems that keep them alive would not be background. They would be culture. Water would be culture too. Every sip would have history. Some of it may once have been sweat, breath, urine, wash water, plant moisture, or condensation on a wall. Advanced life support can recycle water, but recycling is never magic. Filters clog, membranes foul, microbes adapt, pumps wear, salts concentrate, sensors fail, waste streams become resources only if the machines separating them keep working. To a child on Earth, rain falls from the sky. To a child on a starship, Rain may be a simulation in a learning chamber, a controlled humidity cycle inside a farm, or a story told by older generations. Water becomes something counted, cleaned, recovered, and respected. A dropped cup is not a disaster. But wastefulness becomes a moral category. Showers may be rare. Clothing may be cleaned by methods designed to save water. Every garden leaf may be part of the ship's water budget. Food would be even more complicated. A generation ship cannot survive on stored meals alone if the trip lasts centuries. It needs food production. That likely means controlled agriculture, hydroponics, aeroponics, algae systems, fungal protein, microbial bioreactors, insect protein perhaps, carefully managed crops, seed banks, nutrient recycling, and strict disease control. The ship's farms would be beautiful and frightening at the same time. They would provide color, smell, humidity, and something close to nature. They might become the closest thing children have to forests. But they would also be machines. Every plant bed depends on pumps, lights, nutrients, temperature control, pollination, pruning, disease monitoring, and water chemistry. A crop failure is not like a bad season on Earth. There is no outside harvest to import. Imagine a generation ship where a fungal infection spreads through the main wheat crop. On Earth, that would be agricultural trouble. On the ship, it could become political crisis. Rationing begins. People ask who failed to inspect the filters. Children hear adults whisper near the food lockers. Engineers try to isolate the farm module without damaging the air cycle. The ship's leadership has to decide whether to eat emergency reserves or reduce portions for months. A small biological problem becomes a social test. That is why diversity matters. A ship cannot depend on one crop, one protein source, one water loop, one oxygen method, one pollinator, one seed bank, one reactor, or one software controller. Redundancy is not luxury. It is civilization insurance. But redundancy costs mass. Again, the same equation returns. The safer the ship becomes, the harder it is to build and move. The lighter the ship becomes, the more it asks future generations to trust that nothing important will fail. Children born aboard inherit that trade-off in every meal. They may grow up eating food designed for efficiency, not pleasure. The menu may repeat. Ingredients may be chosen because they grow fast, recycle well, store nutrients, and resist disease. Cultural food becomes difficult. A recipe from Earth may require spices, oils, fruits, or animal products that no longer exist on the ship except in seed vaults, memory banks, or festival rations. This affects identity. Food is not only survival, it is family, religion, celebration, grief, memory, place, and language. If the first crew came from many cultures, the ship has to decide which traditions can continue when the ingredients are limited. Over generations, new ship traditions appear. A certain algae bread becomes normal. A rare fruit harvest becomes a holiday. The smell of warm yeast inside a habitat may become what spring once meant. For people born on the Starship, Earth cuisine may feel like mythology. They may watch videos of markets, oceanside meals, farms under sunlight, kitchens with windows that open, and wonder how anyone could live in a world where food grew in open dirt without walls around it. And then there is education. A generation ship cannot merely teach children facts. It has to teach continuity. Every child must learn enough to keep the ship alive, but also enough to understand why the ship exists. They need math, biology, engineering, medicine, ecology, history, navigation, ethics, language, conflict resolution, and practical maintenance. A child who hates engineering may still need to understand air systems. A child who wants to be an artist may still need pressure safety training. A child who becomes a farmer is also a technician. The school is not preparing them for the world. The school is preparing them to maintain the world. That difference is enormous. On Earth, a person can choose from many paths because society is wide. On a starship, the list of necessary roles is narrow and unforgiving. Someone has to maintain the reactors. Someone has to understand guidance. Someone has to manage crops. Someone has to repair medical equipment. Someone has to monitor structure fatigue. Someone has to teach the next group of children. Talent becomes a public resource. This can become dangerous. What if a child is brilliant at music, but the ship needs doctors? What if a young person refuses the assigned training track? What if the population is so small that personal freedom and survival planning collide every generation? A starship society may promise choice, but pressure will always be present. The ship may not force a child into a role openly, but every adult knows the life support team cannot be empty. Every teenager knows some careers are not hobbies but requirements. A generation ship can become gentle in language and strict in reality. Language itself may change. Over centuries, accents drift. Words shorten. Technical slang enters daily speech. Names for ship sections become place names. A rotating farm ring may be called the Green. The main corridor may become Old Spine. The shielded core may become the Deep. Earth languages may blend, separate, or simplify. Children may speak a version of English, Mandarin, Spanish, Hindi, Arabic, or other languages that their ancestors would recognize only partly. This matters because mission instructions are language. Manuals, warnings, archives, legal documents, religious texts, scientific records, and engineering procedures all depend on interpretation. If language drifts too far, the ship may preserve old records, but lose their living meaning. A phrase written in the launch century might be misunderstood in the arrival century. Technical translation becomes survival work. The ship would need archivists, not museum workers in the simple sense, but guardians of meaning. People trained to keep old knowledge readable, to update manuals without distorting them, to explain why ancient procedures exist, and to decide what can be changed safely. Because another terrifying problem is forgetting. A generation ship can forget, even while its computers remember. Data storage is not memory by itself. Files can be corrupted. Formats become obsolete. Sensors can record more than humans can understand. If a maintenance procedure is never used for 80 years, the skill may disappear. If an emergency system is never tested realistically, the crew may know it in theory and fail it in practice. The ship must rehearse disasters that have not happened yet. Children may grow up practicing pressure loss, fire response, crop quarantine, radiation shelter, medical triage, communication failure, reactor shutdown, and habitat evacuation. To them, emergency drills may be as normal as school bells. But constant readiness has a psychological cost. A child who learns too early that one door seal can separate life from vacuum may grow into an adult who never fully relaxes. This is one of the strangest forms of childhood imaginable. Safe enough to raise a family. Dangerous enough that safety must be taught every day. The ship may create playgrounds, art rooms, story circles, virtual forests, low-gravity sports, music halls and festivals because children need more than survival. But outside every joyful space is the same wall, and beyond that wall is interstellar night. A child can laugh in a rotating garden while traveling between stars. Both facts are true. At the same time, the mental world of the starship may be the hardest part to design. Adults who choose the mission can carry purpose. Children born into it must be given meaning without being trapped by propaganda. Teach too little about Earth, and the ship becomes rootless. Teach too much about Earth, and children may grieve a world they never had. Teach the destination as sacred, and doubt becomes rebellion. Teach it as optional, and the mission may dissolve. The society must allow questions, but some questions threaten the whole journey. Why should we continue? Who gave the first crew the right to decide for us? What if the planet ahead is worse than the ship? What if we are not colonists anymore, but a people of the vessel? What if turning around is impossible, but stopping is also impossible? These are not late-stage philosophical issues. They begin with the first child who understands that the ship is moving toward a place they have never chosen. A generation ship needs governance from the beginning, not just a captain. A captain works for a voyage where orders can remain connected to a larger civilization. But after decades, Earth is too far away for real-time authority. After centuries, Earth may be politically changed, unreachable, uninterested, or even gone from the ship's practical life. The ship must govern itself. What political system survives inside a closed, high-risk environment? A democracy may give people voice, but bad decisions can kill everyone. A technocracy may protect systems, but may become cold and controlling. A hereditary command structure may preserve continuity, but risks corruption. An emergency council may work during crisis, then refuse to give power back. Artificial intelligence may help with planning, but raises the question of who controls the rules. The ship is too small for unlimited political conflict. It is too important for blind obedience. That balance may be impossible to perfect. On Earth, a failed government can sometimes be replaced, resisted, escaped, or divided across territory. On a starship, there is nowhere else to go. If a faction takes a farm ring, everyone eats less. If a group sabotages navigation, everyone drifts. If trust collapses, the hull still holds the population together physically, even while society cracks inside it. Children born there would inherit the political culture as part of the architecture. Maybe they grow up in a disciplined society where everyone has duties. Maybe they grow up in a soft communal system built around consensus. Maybe they grow up under strict emergency rules justified by ancient accidents. Maybe they grow up hearing that freedom destroyed an earlier mission phase, or that authoritarian control nearly did. Every generation writes lessons into the next. Sometimes those lessons are wisdom. Sometimes they are trauma. The first major accident may become a holiday, a taboo, a myth, or a law. A fire in the farm ring might change building codes forever. A rebellion in the command section might reshape voting rights. A disease outbreak might create quarantine customs that continue long after the original reason is forgotten. This is how a starship becomes a culture, not by planning every detail, but by surviving events. And survival events leave marks. Fire is one of the worst. On Earth, fire is dangerous because it burns. In a spacecraft, fire also attacks atmosphere. It consumes oxygen, releases smoke and toxic compounds, damages electronics, melts insulation, forces ventilation changes, and can travel through spaces designed to move air. A generation ship would need strict material choices: fire detection, suppression systems, compartmentalization, emergency breathing equipment, and constant training. A child born aboard may learn that flame is not romantic, candles may not exist, open cooking may be forbidden. Birthday rituals from Earth may be recreated with lights instead of fire. Even celebration must adapt to the closed world. Then there is pressure. Every room exists because pressure is held inside it. The hull, internal bulkheads, seals, hatches, valves, suits, emergency shelters, and repair patches are the thin difference between life and vacuum. Children may be told never to ignore a hiss, Never to block a hatch, never to play with sealed surfaces, never to enter a maintenance area without permission. For them, walls are not just walls. They are atmosphere containers. That changes the emotional meaning of home. On Earth, home protects you from weather, strangers, cold, heat, rain, and noise. On a starship, home protects you from the universe itself. The wall beside a child's bed may be only one layer in a system that keeps their blood from boiling, their lungs from emptying, and their body from freezing or overheating. The more a child understands, the more ordinary life becomes miraculous. A quiet night is thousands of systems not failing. A normal breakfast is agriculture, power, water recycling, air control, microbial management, and population planning working together. A school lesson is possible because the ship's orbit through interstellar space remains stable enough that no crisis interrupts it. Yet humans cannot live in constant awe. Eventually, the miracle becomes normal. That is another risk. People born aboard may become casual with the systems that their ancestors feared. They may see warnings as old-fashioned. They may bypass rules to save time. They may decorate equipment. They may treat sacred machinery as furniture because it has always worked in their lifetime. A generation ship must fight familiarity, not through fear alone, because fear exhausts people. It must build habits, rituals, design, training, and culture that keep respect alive without turning daily life into panic. The best ship would make safe behavior easy. Dangerous mistakes would be physically difficult. Important systems would be understandable. Maintenance would not be hidden so deeply that only a priesthood of engineers understands reality. Because if only a small elite understands the ship, society becomes fragile. Knowledge must spread, but not everyone can know everything. So the ship needs layers of competence. Basic safety known by all, practical maintenance known by many, specialized expertise preserved by trained groups, deep system knowledge archived and renewed, simulations used not only for children, but for adults who may one day face a failure no living person has seen. This brings us to machines. A generation ship would depend on machines in a way no Earth civilization ever has. On Earth, nature provides huge background services. Gravity holds the atmosphere. The biosphere cycles carbon and oxygen. Rivers move water. Soil chemistry supports crops. The magnetosphere helps reduce charged particles. The planet absorbs mistakes over vast scales, at least for a while. On a starship, machines and controlled ecosystems replace those planetary services. Pumps become rivers. Reactors become suns. Radiators become weather. Filters become forests. Software becomes part of the climate. If a pump fails on Earth, a building loses water. If the wrong pump fails on a starship, the food system, cooling loop, or oxygen cycle may enter a crisis. If software misreads a sensor, the ship might heat a tank incorrectly, overfeed nutrients, open a valve at the wrong time, or miss the start of a larger fault. The first generation may understand the machines because they helped build or train on them. Later generations inherit them as environment. A child born on the ship may know the hum of a ventilation fan, the way an Earth child knows wind in leaves. They may fall asleep to vibration from a main bearing, learn to identify a pump by rhythm, feel uneasy when a corridor sounds too quiet. This kind of intimacy can be powerful. It can also become superstition. If a system is too complex, people may create stories around it. They may treat certain maintenance cycles as rituals. They may avoid changing old procedures because the ship has survived so far. They may resist necessary upgrades because every change feels like disrespecting the ancestors. Long missions can trap societies in old design. Imagine a computer architecture built before launch, then maintained for 200 years. The original engineers are gone. The hardware has been repaired many times. Some modules have been replaced with locally manufactured parts. Documentation exists, but not all of it matches the current system. Some code is understood. Some is tolerated. Some is feared. Now a young engineer discovers a flaw. Fixing it could improve safety, but the fix touches old systems linked to life support. The engineer asks for permission. The council hesitates. The older technicians remember a previous update that caused a crisis. The farming team worries about downtime. Parents worry because the maintenance window overlaps with a radiation forecast. The ship delays. Delay is often safer in the short term, but enough delays become decay. This is one of the quietest threats to a generation ship, the slow gap between what the ship was designed to be and what it has become. Corrosion, fatigue, radiation damage, microbial films, dust, lubricant breakdown, seal aging, wiring brittleness, software drift, sensor calibration, and human shortcuts all accumulate. No single issue destroys the ship. Together, they create a world that is gradually less like the one described in the launch manuals. Children born aboard inherit not a fresh spacecraft, but an aging one. Even if it is maintained beautifully, it is old by the time many generations pass through it. This changes psychology again. For a child in Generation 8, the ship is ancient, older than any person, older than their grandparents' grandparents. Its launch is history. Its destination may be prophecy. Its maintenance is not just technical work, but preservation of the world. Some may love it, some may hate it, some may see it as a womb, some may see it as a prison. Both feelings could exist in the same person. Because the ship gives them life and removes almost every alternative. That is why the word prison appears so often when people talk about generation ships. But the truth is more complicated. A prison is built to confine people against their will. A generation ship may begin as a voluntary project. The first crew may be brave, informed, and willing. The children, however, are born into walls they cannot leave. The ship is not a prison by design. It becomes prison-like by distance. Even if everyone is kind, even if the society is fair, even if the habitats are beautiful, the stars outside are unreachable without the ship. A child cannot step outside to seek another city. A family cannot move to a different country. A dissenter cannot found a new settlement. A person who feels they do not belong still belongs physically to the vessel. This can make social life intense. On Earth, distance helps manage conflict. People can leave rooms, change schools, move jobs, end relationships, travel, disappear into crowds. On a starship, the population may be small. Everyone may know everyone, or at least know the networks between families. Private conflict can become public quickly. Romantic relationships affect work teams. Old arguments can last decades. The ship must provide privacy in an environment where space is limited. That is not easy. Privacy is not just luxury. It protects identity. It lets children grow without being watched constantly. It lets adults grieve, think, doubt, love, fail, and recover. If every corridor is monitored for safety, every movement logged for resource planning, every room acoustically close to another, people may feel protected and trapped at the same time. Design can help. Small personal rooms, quiet gardens, virtual landscapes, soundproof spaces, rotating schedules that give people time away from crowds, social norms that protect solitude. But solitude in a starship is never complete. The air is shared, the water is shared, the risk is shared. Even silence belongs to a system. Children born there may develop a different idea of self, not the individual standing against a wide world, but the individual inside a living machine. They may be more cooperative than Earth populations because cooperation is taught from birth. Or they may rebel harder because every rule touches survival. They may value the group deeply, yet resent how often the group claims their time, their work, and their choices. This leads to the question of childhood itself. Can a Starship child have a real childhood? Yes, but it would not look like ours. They could play in low-gravity gyms, grow plants in class, listen to stories under simulated stars, learn music in quiet compartments, build models of planets they have never seen, celebrate birthdays with light patterns, and run along curved floors where the horizon bends upward. They might have wonder we cannot imagine. They would see the ship as normal, and that normal would include things Earth children only meet in science fiction. They might understand orbital mechanics early. They might know how to seal a small leak before they know how to swim. They might ask why Earth children are allowed to waste air by shouting outside. But they would also lack things that shaped human childhood for thousands of years. Open sky, weather, wild animals, random landscapes. True darkness under stars, not darkness beyond glass. The feeling of running without walls nearby. The smell of a world not filtered first. Virtual reality can imitate some of this. It may become essential. A Starship could contain immersive Earth archives. Forests, beaches, cities, deserts, snow, storms, birdsong, rivers, mountain trails. Children might visit simulated Earth as part of education or therapy. But simulation is not the same as belonging to a planet. And if the simulation is too beautiful, it may hurt. A child might leave a virtual ocean and return to a corridor where water is rationed. They might walk through a simulated forest, then eat food grown under LEDs. They might see a thunderstorm and realize no real storm will ever pass over their home. The ship has to decide how much Earth to show. Enough to preserve memory, not so much that memory becomes poison. The destination adds another layer. What are these children being prepared for? If the mission aims for a known exoplanet, the ship may have data, mass, orbit, atmosphere hints, star type, maybe signs of water. But across interstellar distances, information is limited. The planet may not be what the first generation hoped. It may have no breathable air. It may be frozen, toxic, dry, stormy, tidally locked, biologically hostile, or simply difficult to reach safely. The children may spend their whole lives training for a world that will disappoint their descendants. That is a cruel possibility. A generation ship has to preserve commitment while accepting uncertainty. It cannot promise paradise. It cannot honestly say the destination will be home in the way Earth was. At best, it can say the destination may offer a chance at a wider future. Even that may depend on machines sent ahead, orbital surveys, probes, landers, and years of preparation before anyone touches the surface. So children may not be raised as future settlers exactly. They may be raised as caretakers of option. Their job is to keep humanity capable of choosing when the destination finally becomes real. That is a heavy inheritance. A child born on Earth can ask what they want to do with their life. A child born on a starship may be told, quietly or openly, that their life is also part of a bridge between a world they never saw and a world they may never reach. This can create pride. It can create meaning. It can also create resentment sharp enough to divide a society. Some may say the mission is sacred, because without it, all the sacrifices before them become meaningless. Others may say the mission is a burden imposed by the dead on the living. Some may want to speed up, take risks, and reach the star sooner. Others may want to slow down, preserve the ship, and accept that arrival matters less than survival. A faction might even argue that the ship itself is the homeland. Not Earth, not the target planet, the ship. If enough generations pass, this idea becomes powerful. People may build identities around habitat rings, family work traditions, farm sections, engineering guilds, archives and ship festivals. They may stop thinking of themselves as travelers and begin thinking of themselves as a space-borne people. Then, arrival becomes a threat. Landing on a planet means gravity, weather, microbes, open environments, unknown chemistry, and a new political order. It means leaving the only world anyone knows. Some may fear planets the way we fear deep space. The descendants of the first crew might reach another star and hesitate to leave the vessel. That is one of the most fascinating and terrifying possibilities. The ship could succeed so well that its people no longer want the mission's original ending. At that point, the question is not whether humans can survive between the stars. The question is whether humans born between the stars would still want to become planetary again. To understand that, we need to look at the Starship not as a vehicle, but as a birthplace. Birth changes ownership. The first crew may own the mission because they chose it. The second generation inherits it. The third generation questions it. The later generations may transform it. A generation ship cannot remain frozen in the dreams of its launch century. If it does, it becomes brittle. It must adapt without forgetting why it exists. It must allow children to become citizens, not cargo. It must preserve the technical systems that keep them alive while also making room for culture, doubt, art, family, grief, and change. That may be harder than propulsion, because engines need physics. Civilizations need trust, and trust is much easier to damage than a metal wall. A rumor can spread through a small population faster than a system alarm. A hidden resource problem can destroy faith in leadership. A class divide between command families and maintenance families can harden over generations. If some sections have better air, better food, better privacy, or better access to education, the ship becomes unequal in ways no one can escape. Inequality on Earth is already dangerous. Inequality in a sealed vessel can become existential. If people believe the system is unfair, they may stop cooperating. If they stop cooperating, maintenance suffers. If maintenance suffers, everyone is endangered, including the privileged. A generation ship cannot survive long as a society where many people feel disposable. This is why the children matter so much. The way they are raised reveals the true ethics of the mission. Are they raised with honest knowledge or only heroic myths? Are they allowed to question the destination or taught that doubt is betrayal? Are they given real choices or only carefully managed options? Are they treated as future citizens or as biological links in a chain? The answers determine whether the ship remains human. Because human survival is not only DNA crossing distance, it is not enough that bodies remain alive. If a starship preserves metabolism but destroys freedom, curiosity, tenderness, humor, and moral imagination, then something important has failed, even if the engines still work. That is the deep problem inside the title of this journey. What happens when humans are born on a starship? They become proof that we can carry life beyond Earth. They also become proof that every journey changes the people who make it. The newborn does not care about interstellar ambition. It needs warmth, breath, food, touch, safety, and a future. The universe outside does not become kinder because the child is innocent. The ship must create kindness inside a place that has none outside. There is another thing children would learn early, even if adults tried to make it sound ordinary. Nothing on the starship is truly disposable. On Earth, a broken chair can be replaced, a phone can be upgraded, a pipe can be ordered, a tool can arrive in a truck, a new computer can be shipped from another continent. Most people do not see the giant industrial network behind that convenience. Mines, factories, ports, roads, warehouses, technicians, raw materials, and energy systems all stand behind the simple act of buying a replacement part. A Starship does not have that luxury. It carries its industrial world with it. That means children born aboard would grow up around repair culture, not consumer culture. A cracked panel is inspected. A worn seal is catalogued. A stripped screw is not thrown away casually. Old parts are scanned, measured, melted, printed, remachined, or stored for later use. Workshops may be among the most important rooms on the vessel because they are the closest thing the ship has to an outside civilization. Manufacturing becomes survival. The ship would need printers, mills, lathes, chemical processors, electronics labs, textile systems, glasswork, medical fabrication, and material recycling. It would need feedstock for metals, polymers, ceramics, wiring, membranes, filters, circuit boards, and tools. It would need people who understand not only how to operate machines, but how to rebuild the machines that rebuild everything else. This creates a strange kind of inheritance. A child might receive a toy made from recycled packaging, a school tablet repaired by 4 previous students, or a set of hand tools older than anyone alive. Objects become biographies. A wrench may have helped repair the first farm leak. A pressure suit patch may be kept in a classroom to show what saved a worker during an accident. A broken valve may become a memorial to the day a habitat almost lost air. On a Starship, material memory is everywhere. And because everything is reused, waste becomes a moral and technical puzzle. Human waste, plant waste, food scraps, packaging, worn clothing, dead microbes, broken components, old medicines, metal shavings, contaminated filters, and damaged insulation. All need destinations. Some can be recycled, some can be sterilized, some can be converted into nutrients. Some must be isolated because reusing it too soon could poison the loop. A society like that cannot hide trash in a landfill. There is no landfill. There is only the ship. So children would learn the difference between waste and resource as a practical language. They may know which bin feeds the fungal protein system, which one goes to chemical recovery, which one must be sealed for contamination, and which materials are too rare to lose. The household chores of a Starship child might include logging mass, checking moisture recovery, cleaning mesh screens, or helping older students sort materials that once would have been invisible after use. This may sound small, but it changes the mind. A child raised in a closed system may understand consequences more directly than we do. Nothing simply goes away. Air breathed out must be handled. Water poured away must be recovered. Food not eaten becomes a nutrient problem. A careless spill can become a cleaning load, a microbial risk, and a lost fraction of the resource budget. That awareness could create disciplined, careful people. It could also create anxiety. If every action has a visible cost, childhood can feel heavy. The ship must teach responsibility without making children feel guilty for existing. That is difficult when existence itself uses oxygen, calories, space, and heat. A healthy Starship culture would have to say 2 things at once. You are precious, and your life depends on systems you must respect. The balance between those messages may decide whether shipborne humans grow up confident or burdened. Justice would also look different. On Earth, punishment often uses separation, prison, exile, removal from a job, removal from a community. On a Starship, separation is hard. Space is limited. Every adult may be needed. A person who commits a serious crime may still have skills the ship cannot easily lose. A violent person cannot be allowed to endanger others, but a small population cannot simply throw people away. What does justice mean when everyone is trapped together? The ship may need secure rooms, mediation systems, psychological care, work restrictions, restorative processes, and emergency authority. It may need laws designed not only to punish, but to repair trust. A murderer, a saboteur, or a person who damages life support would create a crisis larger than the crime itself. Fear would spread through families. Work crews would question safety. Leaders would face pressure to respond harshly. A child growing up after such an event would inherit the story. They might hear why certain corridors have cameras. They might ask why one module has 2 locked doors. They might notice adults lower their voices when a family name is mentioned. In a small world, history never feels far away. Even death changes meaning. People die on Earth, and the planet absorbs them physically and culturally. Cemeteries, ashes, rituals, graves, oceans, forests, and families all hold different forms of goodbye. On a starship, death enters the material loop unless the society decides otherwise. Burial is not simple. A body contains water, minerals, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and disease risk. Keeping remains permanently may use space and preservation resources. Recycling them may feel necessary, but emotionally brutal. The ship would need rituals that allow grief, without lying about reality. Maybe ashes are sealed in a memorial wall. Maybe a fraction of each person's recovered minerals feeds a tree in the central garden. Maybe names are read during navigation updates, linking the dead to the distance crossed. Maybe children learn that the apples grown in one ring carry atoms from ancestors who kept the ship alive. To us, that may sound unsettling. To them, it may become sacred. A generation ship would force humanity to look directly at cycles that Earth usually softens for us. Birth, waste, food, breath, illness, aging, death, and memory would all happen inside a closed loop. The ship would make ecology personal. And ecology is unforgiving. If the microbes in the water system change, people notice. If the gut health of the population shifts because the diet is too narrow, doctors notice. If children show vitamin deficiencies, bone problems, immune changes, or developmental delays, the whole society has to respond. A generation ship cannot afford to separate biology from engineering or culture from medicine. This makes the first Starship children something no human generation has ever been before. They would be citizens of an artificial biosphere. Not visitors, not astronauts on a mission, native-born members of a designed environment. Their bodies, language, habits, fears, hopes, and sense of normality would all be shaped by walls, wheels, loops, lights, filters, crops, schedules, rules, and distance. They may know Earth better as data than as desire. They may feel loyalty to a destination they cannot imagine, or reject it in favor of the only home that ever held them. And when they look out through a shielded observation window, if the ship even has one, they may not see adventure. They may see the reason every rule exists. A black field without air, a universe that cannot be negotiated with, a reminder that their civilization is not spread across a planet, but concentrated inside a moving structure that must stay alive one day at a time. And that is where the first half of the story leads us. We have looked at bodies, gravity, birth, population, air, water, food, education, memory, government, machines, childhood, and the strange moral weight of being born into a mission older than yourself. But this is only the inside of the starship. The next question is what happens when the outside begins to change? Because eventually, after decades or centuries of controlled life, the target star grows brighter. The ship receives new data. The old maps are updated. The destination becomes less like a dream and more like a physical system, with planets, radiation, dust, gravity wells, orbits, hazards, and choices. And then, The children of the ship, or the children of their children, must face the hardest decision of all. Not how to live between the stars, but whether to leave the only world they have ever known. That choice may not feel like a heroic moment. For the people who were born on the Starship, leaving it may feel like walking out of a planet. The ship has gravity, streets, farms, classrooms, sleeping rooms, repair bays, water tanks, medical wards, archives, rules, alarms, and names for every place that matters. It has childhood corners. It has old doors with marks on them. It has walls that were painted by people who died before the youngest crew members were born. It has the smell of metal after maintenance, and the quiet damp air of the crop decks after the lights dim for night. A planet, by comparison, may be only a photograph, a promising circle around a distant star, a set of readings, a gravity number, a surface pressure, a spectrum with lines that suggest water, carbon dioxide, methane, oxygen, or clouds. The mission may have begun because someone on Earth believed that world could support a future, but no telescope can tell a generation ship every detail. No old survey can guarantee that a valley is safe, that a soil is useful, that a climate is stable, that a storm season is survivable, or that a landing site still looks the same after centuries of travel. So when the target star finally becomes more than one bright point in the forward instruments, the people aboard do not simply arrive. They begin the most dangerous inspection in human history. The ship has to slow down, map the system, search for planets, update predictions, watch radiation from the star, study dust, identify asteroids, measure atmospheres, and decide whether the world that was chosen long ago is still worth reaching. The oldest mission plans may suddenly look naive. A planet that seemed Earth-like from far away may turn out to be too dry, too stormy, too radioactive, too cold, too unstable, or wrapped in chemistry that human lungs and crops cannot use. And that is the first terrifying truth about being born on a starship. Your entire life may have been aimed at a destination that does not want you. The children of the ship would grow up with stories about arrival. They may learn the name of the target star before they learn the names of every ancestor in the archives. They may see diagrams of the destination in school. They may practice emergency drills for landing craft they have never touched. They may celebrate old launch anniversaries, not as history from another country, but as the beginning of their own existence. Yet the closer the ship gets, the less symbolic the destination becomes. A real star is not a gentle lamp waiting at the end of a journey. It is a nuclear furnace with wind, flares, radiation, magnetic storms, and long cycles of change. If it is a red dwarf, it may be small and long-lived, but also capable of violent activity that can strip atmospheres or flood nearby planets with high-energy particles. If it is larger and hotter than the Sun, its habitable zone may sit farther out, while its lifetime may be shorter and its ultraviolet light harsher. If it belongs to a binary system, the sky itself may carry complicated rhythms of light and gravity. The ship cannot treat arrival like pulling into harbor. It has to become cautious. If it enters too quickly, it may not be able to brake safely. If it uses too much fuel slowing down, it may not have enough for orbit changes, lander missions, or emergency maneuvers. If its engines were designed and maintained for generations, every burn now tests work done by people who never expected to see the result. A valve installed by a great-grandparent may help decide whether their descendants live near a new planet or fly past it forever. The Starship children may watch all of this from inside the same corridors where they learn to walk. They may hear the adults speak differently, shorter, more carefully. The ship may enter a phase where almost everything becomes a mission-critical decision. Windows in the schedule close, delays matter. Instruments that once ran quietly become central to survival. The navigation team must understand gravity wells, orbital resonances, dust belts, and radiation zones. The engineering team must know whether the ship can remain whole during braking. The medical team must prepare for the possibility of gravity change, surface exposure, injury, contamination, and psychological shock. For the first time, the generation born in transit may realize that the mission was not only to survive the journey, it was to survive the end of the journey. The end of a journey can be more dangerous than the middle, because it forces decisions that waiting could hide. During deep space cruise, the Starship has one obvious rule: keep the habitat alive. Every repair, harvest, lesson, birth, funeral, exercise routine, council meeting, and ration plan points back to that central goal. But arrival breaks that simplicity. It creates options. Stay aboard, enter orbit, send probes, send robots, build a station, land a small crew, land everyone, avoid the planet, and search the system for a better place. Use asteroids for resources, dismantle part of the ship, preserve the ship as a lifeboat. Each option has a cost. If the ship remains in space, the children who dreamed of ground may never stand under an open sky. If the colony lands too early, it may lose the protection of a habitat that has kept humanity alive for centuries. If it breaks apart the ship for materials, it may destroy the only functioning world the community understands. If it refuses to land, the mission may feel like a betrayal to those who were taught that arrival was the purpose of their lives. This can divide a society. Not in a simple way, with brave explorers on one side and fearful people on the other. The disagreement would be deeper than that. It would be about identity. Some may say the ship was only a bridge, and bridges are not meant to be homes forever. Others may answer that the ship became a nation, a biosphere, and a graveyard, and that no planet has the right to erase it. Younger people may be more curious about the surface, or more attached to ship life, because they never knew any other environment. Older people may want the mission completed before they die, or may fear watching their grandchildren risk everything on a world still poorly known. The ship could arrive physically before its society is ready to arrive emotionally. And unlike a normal expedition, the crew cannot simply ask Earth what to do. Earth is too far away. Any message from home may be decades, centuries, or longer out of date, depending on the destination. The people who approved the mission are gone. The governments that funded it may be gone. The languages used in the original documents may have changed, both on Earth and aboard the ship. The Starship community has to decide for itself whether the old promise still binds people who never agreed to it. That is one of the central problems of humans born on a starship. They inherit a mission, but they also inherit the right to question it. The first probes would become the community's new eyes. Before anyone risks a human landing, machines would go down first. Small orbiters would map clouds, surface temperature, magnetic fields, radiation, and terrain. Atmospheric probes would fall through the sky, tasting gases that may have been guessed at for generations. Landers would test soil, dust, ice, wind, pressure, chemistry, and seismic activity. Drones or rovers might crawl over plains, into craters, across frozen shorelines, or beneath strange skies, sending back the first close images of the world that shaped the lives of people who had never seen it. Those images could be beautiful. They could also be devastating. A planet can look blue from space and still be deadly. An ocean can exist under an atmosphere too thick, too thin, or too poisonous for human survival. A surface can be rich in water, but locked under ice, mixed with salts, buried under dust, or contaminated with chemicals that corrode machines. A world in the habitable zone can still have no breathable air, no safe pressure, no useful soil, no stable climate, or no protection from radiation. The people aboard may discover that the destination is not Earth 2. It is work. If the planet has no life and no breathable atmosphere, then the colony must be built like an outpost on a hostile world. Habitats need pressure shells, radiation shielding, power systems, heat control, airlocks, water processing, medical rooms, food production, storage, workshops, and enough redundancy that one accident does not end everything. The ship would have to send down equipment in pieces, perhaps over many years. The first landing site would have to become a construction zone before it becomes a town. If the planet does have life, the problem may become even harder. Alien microbes, plants, or ecosystems would not automatically be dangerous, but they would be unknown. Their chemistry might not interact with human biology in the same way Earth organisms do, or it might interact in ways no one can predict. Even harmless life would raise a moral and scientific problem. Landing humans could contaminate the world forever. Earth microbes carried inside bodies, tools, waste, filters, boots, and machines might spread into an alien biosphere. Human settlement could destroy the very discovery the mission dreamed of finding. A lifeless planet is brutal because everything must be built. A living planet is dangerous because everything must be protected. The Starship children may have spent their lives thinking arrival meant finally stepping outside. Instead, arrival may mean learning that outside is even more complicated than the ship. Gravity would be one of the first things the body notices. If the Starship used rotation to create artificial gravity, its strength may have been chosen for survival, comfort, engineering limits, or energy efficiency. It might imitate Earth gravity. It might be lower. It might vary across decks. Children born there would grow bones, muscles, hearts, inner ears, and reflexes inside that designed field. The target planet would not ask whether their bodies were ready. A planet with higher gravity than the ship could make every step heavy. Standing could become exhausting. Falls could break bones more easily. Heart strain could increase. Equipment would feel heavier. Construction would be slower. Children and older adults might struggle most. Even if the gravity is lower than Earth, the transition could still be difficult if it differs from the ship's artificial gravity. Balance, blood flow, muscle use, and movement habits would all have to adjust. For people born aboard, a planet would not feel like freedom at first. It might feel like illness. The sky may be too bright or too open. The horizon may be too far away. Natural wind may feel violent after a lifetime of controlled airflow. Rain, dust, snow, smell, insects, static electricity, loose soil, or the simple unevenness of ground may produce stress that Earth-born humans would not expect. A person raised in corridors knows where floors end, how air sounds, how doors seal, where to grip during emergencies, and what danger alarms mean. A landscape offers none of that familiarity. There could be a kind of planet sickness. Not a single disease, but a whole set of reactions. Vertigo under open sky, panic in wide terrain, difficulty sleeping without the ship's vibration, fear of weather, discomfort with natural darkness, anxiety when not surrounded by walls, and a strange grief for the habitat that had been presented as temporary, but felt like the only true home. This is not weakness, it is adaptation. The Starship children adapted to the environment that raised them. Their nervous systems learned its rhythms. Their memories formed inside its boundaries. Their sense of safety was built around sealed doors and recycled air. A planet might be the destination of the mission, but to them, it could feel alien in a way that Earth-born planners never fully imagined. The first humans born on a starship may not be desperate to escape the ship. Some may be terrified to leave it. The landing itself would be a test of everything that survived the journey. A large generation ship would probably not land whole. It would be too massive, too valuable, and too deeply integrated to risk on a single descent. Instead, smaller landers, cargo vehicles, or modular descent craft would carry people and supplies to the surface. Those craft may have been stored, maintained, rebuilt, or manufactured during the voyage. Their designs could be centuries old by the time they are used for their original purpose. Nothing about landing on another world is gentle. A vehicle must enter an atmosphere or descend through vacuum, control heat, manage speed, avoid terrain, handle dust or weather, and touch down without tipping, cracking, burning, or burying itself. If the planet has an atmosphere, it may help with braking but create heating, turbulence, winds, and uncertainty. If the atmosphere is thin, parachutes may not do enough. If there is no atmosphere, engines must handle nearly all of the descent. If the surface is icy, dusty, rocky, muddy, or chemically reactive, the landing site may create hazards after touchdown. Every kilogram matters. Food, spare parts, habitat modules, medical supplies, power systems, water processors, construction tools, protective clothing, communication relays, and scientific instruments compete for space and mass. A crew landing without enough equipment can become trapped on the surface. A cargo landing that fails can delay human descent for years. A damaged power module can make a safe site unsafe. A cracked pressure cylinder can turn a colony plan into an evacuation plan. The shipborne population would watch landings with a kind of pressure no mission control on Earth ever felt. There is no backup planet nearby. There may be no second ship behind them. The people landing are not temporary astronauts with a return date printed on a schedule. They may be relatives, teachers, engineers, farmers, doctors, and young adults who have decided to become the first ground generation. When a lander drops away from the main ship, it carries not just passengers, but a branch of the future. And if it disappears in fire, dust, or silence, everyone aboard the ship has to keep living afterward. A generation ship community would need rituals for success and failure. It would need ways to mourn without losing function. It would need a culture that can absorb catastrophe without tearing itself apart. It would need children to understand that exploration is not a story where effort guarantees safety. The first landing could become a founding myth, or a warning that delays the surface dream for another generation. If a surface base is built, it would begin as a wound in the landscape. Not a city, not a shining dome, more likely a cluster of sealed modules, cargo shells, buried tanks, power units, antenna masts, landing pads, cables, trenches, rover tracks, radiation shelters, storage berms, and temporary walls made from whatever the world provides. The first priority would not be beauty. It would be pressure, heat, electricity, water, air, and a way to hide from radiation or storms. The ship may have farms, but the surface may not. So food production has to be duplicated, moved, or expanded. Hydroponic racks, algae bioreactors, fungal cultures, soil experiments, seed vaults, pollination systems, nutrient loops, and waste recycling all become part of colonization. If local water exists, it has to be extracted, purified, stored, and protected from freezing, boiling, contamination, or loss. If local soil contains toxic compounds, it cannot simply be used like garden dirt. If there is no useful soil at all, agriculture remains an industrial process inside sealed rooms. The first base must also learn to manufacture. A colony that depends forever on the Starship for parts is not independent. It needs workshops that can make seals, valves, wires, panels, brackets, pipes, filters, tools, replacement pieces, structural beams, and eventually machines that make other machines. This is harder than saying the word industry. Earth industry relies on mines, roads, refineries, factories, chemical plants, specialists, shipping networks, and thousands of materials that appear in the right place because an entire planet supports them. A new colony has none of that at first. It has a landing site, a limited inventory, a workforce that must also stay alive. The Starship might carry advanced fabrication systems, but those systems still need feedstock, energy, calibration, maintenance, and skilled operators. If a printer breaks, another machine must repair it. If a furnace cracks, someone must replace parts. If a tool requires a rare element not found nearby, the colony may discover that local self-sufficiency is much further away than the mission plan suggested. The shipborne humans would understand closed loops better than any Earth society before them. But a planet forces closed loops to scale up. The difference between keeping a few thousand people alive inside a moving habitat and growing a permanent civilization on a strange world is not just size, it is complexity. A town needs more than survival. It needs margin, repair capacity, education, childcare, records, justice, research, art, conflict resolution, planning, and enough spare time for people to remain human, rather than becoming maintenance workers in a pressure shell. The first base would not be the end of the Starship story. It would be the beginning of a harder one. The ship itself becomes a problem once settlement begins. As long as everyone lives aboard, the answer to the question "where is home?" is simple. After arrival, that answer splits. Some people live in orbit. Some live on the surface. Some travel between them. Some are born after landing and may see the ship as an old object in the sky. Others remain aboard and may see the surface colony as an experiment that is slowly stealing the mission's resources. The Starship can be many things at once: a habitat, a museum, a factory, an emergency shelter, a political center, a source of spare parts, a symbol of the journey, and possibly the only vehicle capable of leaving the system if the planet fails. This creates a dangerous temptation. A surface colony will need materials. The ship contains materials already refined, assembled, and accessible. It may have shielding mass, structural beams, old fuel tanks, unused modules, cargo frames, manufacturing equipment, and redundant systems. Taking pieces from it could accelerate settlement, but every piece removed may reduce the ship's ability to protect, move, or support people. Dismantling the Starship could feel practical. It could also be cultural violence. Imagine being born in a place, learning its corridors, knowing where your grandparents lived, where your first school was, where the memorial wall stands, and then being told that parts of it must be cut away to build a settlement below. One group may call it recycling. Another may call it destroying the only world that kept their ancestors alive. A constitution written during deep space cruise may not be enough for this. The community may need new law for orbital citizens, surface citizens, resource rights, land claims, ship preservation, emergency authority, reproduction policies, scientific zones, contamination controls, and the rights of people who refuse to relocate. The first planet in another system would not only be a scientific destination, it would be a political earthquake. And the children born after arrival may inherit an argument they did not start. Some will say the ship should be preserved forever, a sacred origin point. Others will say a world cannot grow while its best materials remain locked in orbit as a monument. Some may want the ship ready for further exploration. Others may want it turned into a ring station, a power platform, a cargo yard, or a school for orbital engineering. No answer is clean. That is why arrival does not remove the generational burden. It changes its shape. Then comes the question of who belongs where. A person born on the Starship may not be physically suited to the surface. A person born on the surface may not tolerate ship gravity, air chemistry, confinement, or rotation in the same way. Over time, two branches of the same mission could begin to diverge. Their bodies might adapt differently, their accents might change, their calendars may split. Their holidays may focus on different events. Their dangers may become different enough that each group struggles to understand the other. The shipborne may measure life by maintenance cycles, harvest rotations, orbital windows, and system checks. Surface-borne children may measure it by weather, seasons, construction periods, radiation alerts, local day length, and terrain. Even language could carry the divide. Words that once meant simple things may change meaning. Up and down become different in orbit and on the ground. Outside means vacuum for one group and open landscape for another. Home may mean a rotating habitat to one child and a pressure village under regolith or ice to another. Earth may become a myth shared by both, but interpreted through different fears. This is how a single mission can become multiple cultures. At first, the difference may be useful. Orbital people specialize in navigation, ship repair, communications, manufacturing, and system-wide logistics. Surface people specialize in construction, local resources, agriculture, geology, weather, and settlement expansion. The two groups need each other, but dependence can also create resentment. If surface crops fail, orbit must help. If orbital systems degrade, the surface may be asked to send materials or labor. If a crisis hits both at once, choices become painful. A generation ship mission begins with unity, because everyone is inside one fragile vessel. Arrival creates geography. Geography creates interests. Interests create politics. This may be unavoidable. Human beings form attachments to places. They defend routines that make survival predictable. They tell stories that justify their sacrifices. The first generation born on the ship already has a different identity from the launch generation. The first generation born on the new world would add another layer. So the question, what happens when humans are born on a starship, does not end with those children growing up. It continues when their descendants disagree over what the starship was for. Was it a womb for a new world? Was it a permanent civilization? Was it a vehicle, a nation, or an ancestor? The answer may decide whether arrival becomes peace or fracture. Health would remain a central threat long after landing. People often imagine that once a colony reaches a planet, life becomes easier because there is ground beneath their feet. But ground does not automatically provide safety. The colony still has to manage air pressure, oxygen, carbon dioxide, humidity, microbes, waste, nutrition, medicine, injury, childbirth, infection, mental health, and long-term development. A surface base may add new hazards rather than remove old ones. Dust can enter seals, lungs, joints, filters, and bearings. Local minerals may be sharp, reactive, or toxic. Radiation may still be dangerous if the planet lacks a thick atmosphere or strong magnetic field. Low gravity may continue weakening bones and muscles if the planet is small. Higher gravity may strain hearts and joints if bodies adapted to lighter conditions. A different day length may disrupt sleep. A dimmer or redder star may affect lighting systems, crop growth, and mood. A planet with no familiar biosphere gives no outdoor recovery, no natural food chain, no forests, no oceans safe for swimming, and no background of life that human psychology evolved inside. Medicine becomes harder because the colony cannot rely on Earth's supply chains. Drugs expire, surgical tools wear out, imaging machines need parts. Sterile environments require energy and filtration. Specialists are limited. A rare disease on Earth can be sent to a major hospital. On a new world, a rare disease may have to be handled by whoever is present, using whatever equipment survived the voyage and landing. Genetic diversity matters too. A generation ship must begin with enough genetic variation or advanced reproductive technology to avoid long-term inbreeding problems. But after arrival, population bottlenecks can still happen. Accidents, disease, conflict, infertility, or uneven birth rates may reduce options. If the colony splits between ship and surface, each population might become smaller and more vulnerable. Careful planning could help, but human life does not always follow a plan. Children born after arrival would be the real test. A first landing crew can accept risk. A newborn cannot consent to an experimental world. The colony must ask whether pregnancy is safe under local gravity, whether development proceeds normally, whether children can grow healthy bones and immune systems, whether radiation exposure can be kept low enough across decades, whether the environment offers enough stimulation, community, and freedom for minds to develop well. A Starship child is born inside a machine built to travel. A colony child may be born inside a machine pretending to be a planet. That difference is smaller than it first appears. Education would change after arrival because the future becomes less abstract. During the voyage, children learn about systems that keep them alive and a destination most of them cannot touch. After arrival, lessons can include real terrain, real weather, real resources, real hazards, and real construction. A child might study geology in the morning and then watch miners extract ice or metal from the nearby landscape. They may learn orbital mechanics not as an ancient subject, but because family members commute between the surface and ship. They may study biology while helping maintain the colony's crops or monitoring contamination barriers. But education also has to decide what to do with Earth. How much Earth history should be taught when no one alive has seen Earth? How much time should children spend learning old nations, old oceans, old languages, extinct animals, and launch-era culture? If the community is struggling to build a permanent settlement, practical knowledge may seem more urgent. Yet if Earth memory fades too far, the colony may lose the reason it understands itself as human. The archives become a kind of second atmosphere. They preserve art, music, literature, science, maps, recordings, family histories, languages, and records of mistakes. They remind shipborne and surface-borne children that their world did not begin with the habitat wall. But archives can also become selective. People choose what to repeat. They simplify. They mythologize. They argue about interpretation. Over centuries, even accurate records can become emotionally distant. A child born on the surface may ask why anyone cares about a blue planet that none of them can reach. An elder born on the ship may answer that without that planet, none of them would exist. Both may be right. This creates a strange educational burden. The colony must teach children how to survive in a world that is not Earth, while also teaching them why Earth matters. It must train engineers, farmers, doctors, pilots, builders, ecologists, programmers, teachers, and lawmakers, but also people capable of asking whether survival alone is enough. A purely technical society can keep machines running and still become spiritually thin. A purely nostalgic society can honor the past while failing to build the future. The difficult balance is to raise children who can repair an oxygen valve, grow food under artificial light, understand their local star, recognize a radiation warning, read old poetry, question authority, and still feel that their lives are not merely an extension of a mission plan written centuries earlier. For humans born on a starship, education is not just preparation for adulthood. It is the method by which a moving fragment of Earth tries not to forget itself. One of the quietest dangers is success. Failure is easy to imagine. a broken system, a dead crop, a bad landing, a radiation event, a conflict that escalates. But success can also destabilize a generation-ship society, because success removes the problem that organized everyone. During the journey, the mission gives life a frame. People are born into a purpose: maintain the ship, protect the population, preserve knowledge, and reach the destination. That purpose may be heavy, unfair, and restrictive, but it is clear. After arrival, especially if the colony becomes stable, the question changes from "how do we complete the mission?" to "what do we do now?" That question can be frightening. The first surface farms produce enough food. The first child grows normally under the new gravity. The first local materials become reliable building stock. The first emergency is handled without help from the ship. The first generation born after landing reaches adulthood. At every step, the old mission loses some of its urgency. People may begin to want private lives, new settlements, different laws, art not centered on survival, research not justified by immediate need, and futures not planned by ancestors. This is normal. It may also feel like betrayal. Those who sacrificed inside the Starship may expect the colony to remember the journey forever. Those born after landing may see the journey as old suffering that should not control them. A young person on the surface may not want to become a maintenance engineer, archivist, radiation technician, or settlement planner. They may want to explore, build music halls, study clouds, search for local life, design new habitats, or leave for another moon in the system. Freedom returns slowly, and it may arrive as conflict. A society built around emergency can struggle when life becomes wider. Rules that made sense in a closed habitat may feel suffocating on a planet. Population policies that were necessary on the ship may be challenged by families who want more children. Resource limits may still exist, but people will argue over how strict they should be. The culture of obedience required for survival may clash with the culture of choice required for a healthy civilization. In that sense, a generation ship does not only transport people, it transports habits designed for danger. The hardest part of arrival may be learning which habits to keep, which to change, and which to finally let die. The new star system itself may offer more than one future. A habitable planet is the dream, but a real system contains other objects: asteroids, moons, comets, gas giants, dust, ice belts, and empty orbits. If the main planet is only partly suitable, the community may spread into multiple habitats instead of choosing one home. Some people may prefer orbital stations. Others may build underground bases on moons. Mining crews may move through asteroid fields. Scientific teams may settle near ice deposits, volcanic regions, magnetic anomalies, or ancient impact basins. The mission can become a system-wide civilization before it becomes a planetary one. This may be safer. It may also be harder. Multiple settlements reduce the chance that one disaster kills everyone, but they increase transportation needs, communication complexity, political differences, and maintenance burdens. A colony that spreads too quickly may stretch itself thin. A colony that stays too concentrated may remain vulnerable. Every expansion choice becomes a risk calculation. For people born on the Starship, movement between habitats may feel natural. They already understand that home can be artificial. They may be better prepared than Earthborn settlers to live in rotating stations, pressure tunnels, sealed domes, or buried chambers. They may not require oceans or forests to feel civilized. Their childhood taught them that a world can be built from systems. This is one of their strengths. It is also one of the unsettling possibilities. Humans born on a starship may become less planetary than we are. They may not think of civilization as something that belongs on the surface of a world. They may see planets as heavy, risky, resource-rich environments, but not automatically as homes. They may prefer habitats that can be repaired, spun for gravity, shielded, expanded, moved, or abandoned. To them, a natural planet may seem less controllable than a designed station. This would change the future of humanity. The first-generation ship might not end by creating a new Earth. It might create a culture of artificial worlds, a civilization that feels safer in cylinders than under skies. A people who see stars not as unreachable lights, but as energy sources around which habitats can gather. A society that knows how to carry its environment with it, not because it is romantic, but because its first children learned that life can exist only where the system holds. The destination may not be the planet. The destination may be the ability to build homes anywhere matter and energy allow. There is another possibility that would haunt every planning room. The destination may fail after settlement begins. A star can become more active than expected. A planet's climate can shift. Local resources may run out faster than projected. Hidden geology may make construction dangerous. An atmosphere may erode. A dust cycle may worsen. Radiation levels may fluctuate. A biological discovery may force quarantine. A key settlement may be lost to fire, pressure failure, disease, landslide, ice collapse, or political violence. In old mission designs, arrival may appear as the finish line. In reality, arrival begins a new era of vulnerability. The community has to keep the Starship, or some replacement, capable of supporting retreat, rescue, or relocation for as long as possible. But maintaining that ability consumes resources. Engines decay. Fuel reserves are finite or difficult to replace. Large structures age. Shielding degrades. Skilled workers die and must be trained again. If a surface colony becomes confident, it may stop funding the orbital lifeboat. If it waits too long, the lifeboat may become symbolic rather than functional. A generation ship that took centuries to cross interstellar space might reach its target only to become stranded in a system that still cannot support a long-term future. Then, the descendants face a cruel question. Do they stay and adapt? Do they build new habitats? Do they attempt another interstellar journey with fewer resources than their ancestors had? Do they send probes to nearby stars and hope there is a better world within reach? Do they become permanent wanderers, not because they chose exploration, but because no natural home was good enough? This is where the idea of being born on a starship becomes larger than one vehicle. Once a civilization learns to survive between stars, it may never fully escape that identity. A planet may offer land, water, minerals, and sky, but it cannot erase the knowledge that worlds can fail, and that survival may depend on mobility. The children of the ship may become the first humans raised with a different instinct from ours. We think of planets as homes, and spacecraft as vehicles. They may think of vehicles as homes, and planets as opportunities. That shift may be the true beginning of interstellar humanity. The emotional cost would be carried in small moments. A child on the surface may look up and see the old starship cross the sky as a bright moving point. A grandmother born aboard may watch from a pressure window and feel homesick for corridors that still exist in orbit. A repair worker may walk through an abandoned ring section where the lights are lower now because fewer people live there. A teacher may show students the launch footage from Earth and notice that the ocean in the recording feels less real to them than the local dust outside the school. History becomes physical in a way Earth societies rarely experience. The ship is not an artifact in a museum. It is overhead. It can be visited, repaired, argued over, mined, worshipped, feared, or ignored. Its old systems may still clean water or transmit data. Its archives may hold the only complete memory of Earth. Its damaged sections may contain frozen storage unused equipment, ancestral objects, or sealed rooms that younger generations are not allowed to enter. Every society has ruins. This, one may live beside the ruin of its own womb. The first humans born on the Starship would become elders in a world they helped reach, but may not fully understand. They would remember deep space cruise as normal life. They would remember when the destination was still far enough to be imagined freely. They would remember the first close images, the first landing, the first death on the surface, the first harvest grown under the alien star, and the first child who did not identify the ship as home. That may hurt, not because progress is wrong, but because every successful migration changes the meaning of the place left behind. The Starship is supposed to deliver life to a new world. If it succeeds, it becomes less central. The better the colony does, the more the ship becomes past instead of present. Some people may accept this with peace. Others may spend their final years aboard, listening to the hum they knew as children. This is the part of interstellar travel that technical diagrams rarely show. A generation ship is not just engines and life support. It is a place where people form attachments. It is a childhood environment. It is a cemetery. It is a government. It is a farm. It is a school. It is an archive. It is a machine that becomes meaningful because humans cannot live anywhere without making it part of themselves. So when humans are born on a Starship, the journey creates a kind of belonging no mission planner can fully control. The outside universe will not stop changing while all of this happens. Stars age, orbits shift, asteroids collide, dust moves, magnetic cycles rise and fall. The new system may sit near other stars that will pass closer over millions of years. Galactic tides may disturb distant comets. Supernovae may occur somewhere in the broader neighborhood. The interstellar environment may change as the system moves through different regions of the galaxy. A planet is not a guarantee of permanence. Neither is a starship. The descendants of the first shipborne humans would eventually have to decide whether to remain within one system forever or keep some capacity for outward movement. This decision may arrive long after the original mission is considered finished. A civilization built from a generation ship may have better reasons than we do to send new starships, not because adventure calls, but because redundancy becomes part of survival. If one settlement exists, it can end. If many settlements exist across a system, survival improves. If several star systems contain related human civilizations, the chance that one disaster erases all of them becomes smaller. But each expansion repeats the original moral problem. New children may be born into new ships. New missions may last centuries. New generations may inherit destinations chosen before their birth. The first Starship society may have to ask whether it has the right to create more shipborne humans after knowing exactly what that life costs. This is not an easy question. Without such journeys, humanity may remain limited to single systems and vulnerable to local disasters. With them, children become part of missions they did not choose. A civilization that values freedom must explain why it creates lives inside closed vessels, moving through dangerous emptiness. A civilization that values survival must explain why it refuses to spread if spreading is possible. The answer may not be a clean yes or no. It may depend on how the ships are built, how people are governed, how much choice later generations have, how reversible the mission is, how honest the culture remains about danger, and whether children are raised as property of a destination or citizens with the right to reshape the purpose they inherit. The first humans born on a starship would become the evidence used in that debate. Their health, their grief, their creativity, their conflicts, their success. Their testimony would matter more than any launch-era philosophy. There is also the question of what they become biologically over long stretches of time. If a starship population spends generations in controlled gravity, controlled light, controlled diet, controlled microbial exposure, controlled reproduction, and a limited environment, natural and cultural selection may act differently than on Earth. Medicine can reduce some pressures, but it cannot remove all of them. Traits that help people tolerate confinement, artificial gravity, limited sunlight, repetitive maintenance, or specific diets may become more common. Cultural habits can influence who has children, who takes risks, who receives certain medical interventions, and what behaviors are rewarded. After arrival, the environment changes again. Surface gravity, local radiation, diet, day length, social structure, disease exposure, and settlement work may create new pressures. Genetic engineering might be used to reduce health risks, improve radiation resistance, adapt to lower gravity, or manage inherited disorders. Even without deliberate modification, generations of reproductive choices and medical practices can alter a population. This does not mean Starship humans stop being human in some dramatic way. But they may become human differently. Their bodies may be shaped by design and necessity. Their immune systems may develop in cleaner, stranger environments. Their bones and muscles may reflect gravity histories unlike ours. Their microbiomes may be managed as carefully as air filters. Their childhoods may include medical monitoring from birth. Their sense of normal health may differ from Earth's standards that no longer fit their lives. On Earth, humans evolved under open sky, daily sunlight, natural gravity, large ecosystems, and constant microbial exchange. Shipborne humans would grow within engineering. This makes the line between biology and technology less clear. A child may depend on medical implants, genetic screening, microbiome regulation, artificial gravity schedules, light therapy, nutritional design, and developmental monitoring. Their health is not simply personal. It is part of the habitat system. That can protect them. It can also create control. Who decides which traits are acceptable? Who has authority over reproduction? Who controls genetic records? What happens if parents refuse recommended interventions? What rights does a child have over modifications made before birth? How does a small population prevent discrimination based on genetic risk or environmental adaptation? The terrifying part is not that Starship humans might change. Change is normal across time. The danger is that survival pressure may make deeply personal choices feel like engineering requirements. On a starship, even the body can become infrastructure. If the planet is not suitable, the mission does not simply end. It mutates. The community may remain in orbit and build habitats using asteroids, moons, and the star's energy. It may convert the starship into the center of a growing swarm of stations. It may send expeditions to other planets in the system, searching for better resources. It may park near a gas giant's moons, use icy bodies for water, extract metals from asteroids, and gradually become a civilization that never needed a surface world after all. This outcome may sound like failure from Earth's perspective. For shipborne humans, it may feel natural. They were already living in an artificial world. Building more artificial worlds may be easier than adapting to a planet that offers the wrong gravity, wrong atmosphere, wrong chemistry, or wrong radiation environment. A system with no Earth-like planet can still contain enormous resources. The star provides energy, asteroids provide metals, icy bodies provide water and volatiles. Rotating habitats can provide gravity. Shielding can be built from local mass. Over time, a star system can be settled without ever finding a garden planet. This possibility changes the meaning of the title question. What happens when humans are born on a starship? They may become the first humans who do not see planets as necessary. That is a profound break from our history. Earth shaped our bodies and stories. Land, sea, weather, seasons, rivers, mountains, and skies are built into human culture. But a civilization descended from a generation ship may organize itself around habitats, energy flows, resource nodes, orbital mechanics, and engineered ecosystems. Its children may draw homes as cylinders, rings, clusters, or buried modules rather than continents. This does not mean they lose beauty. They may find beauty in rotating farms, in sunrise bands reflected through mirrors, in the deep blue of water tanks, in stars seen through shielded ports, in the quiet rhythm of a habitat that works. Their art may focus on pressure doors, docking lights, maintenance songs, migration maps, and the memory of engines. To us, that may feel sad. To them, it may feel ordinary. That is the strange power of birth. The environment that seems artificial to one generation becomes nature to the next. The first Starship-born people would also change how humanity understands courage. The launch generation would be celebrated for leaving Earth. They chose danger, at least in some form. They boarded the vessel. They said goodbye to a planet. They accepted that they might never arrive. Their descendants face a different kind of courage. They did not choose the ship, but they must still maintain it. They did not choose the destination, but they must decide what it means. They did not choose the original sacrifice, but they live inside its consequences. Their bravery is not the dramatic bravery of launch. It is the quieter bravery of inheriting a fragile world and keeping it alive while asking whether the inherited goal is still right. This may be harder to honor because it looks ordinary from the inside. Wake up, check systems, attend class, repair filters, exercise, harvest food, care for children, resolve disputes, study a planet, vote on a landing, mourn an accident, try again. Over decades, this routine becomes the real journey. The Starship is not carried by one heroic crew, but by ordinary people doing required work so consistently that the ship survives long enough for a destination to become visible. A civilization like that would probably distrust simple adventure stories. It would know that survival is repetitive, technical, emotional, political, and often boring, until it suddenly becomes terrifying. It would know that the difference between destiny and disaster can be a maintenance checklist completed correctly by someone no history book remembers. And this is why the lives of shipborne humans may be both constrained and meaningful. They are constrained because the habitat demands obedience to physical limits. They are meaningful because without their daily work, the entire chain of generations breaks. Each person is a link, but also a full human life, with private joys and fears that cannot be reduced to mission function. That balance is delicate. A society that treats people only as links becomes cruel. A society that ignores the chain may not survive. The first humans born on a starship would live inside that tension from their first breath. Eventually, the original question becomes personal. Imagine one of the first adults born after launch, now old, sitting inside the observation section as the destination star shines brighter than it did in childhood. They have never felt wind. They have never smelled rain. They have never stood on soil. They know Earth through recordings and the target world through instruments. They have spent a lifetime repairing systems that were old before they were born. Their grandchildren may be training for surface operations. Their great-grandchildren may be among the first who could grow up on a planet. The old person may feel pride, but also fear. If the landing succeeds, the world they knew will no longer be the center. If it fails, the mission may break the hearts of everyone who waited. If the colony grows, their descendants may become something they cannot fully imagine. If the ship is dismantled, pieces of their childhood may become walls in a town below. This is not a science fiction decoration. It is the human center of the problem. Long missions are not only measured in years and kilometers. They are measured in the way people accept losses that were built into the plan before they existed. Every generation gives something to the next and receives something from the last. On Earth, this happens across land, cities, families, and cultures. On a starship, it happens inside a machine where the link between generations is impossible to ignore. The shipborne elder may understand something the launch generation could not. Earth people imagine the destination as the point of the voyage. Those born in transit may understand that the voyage itself became a world. And those born after arrival may eventually understand that worlds can be temporary without being meaningless. That may be the deepest transformation. Humans born on a starship would not simply carry humanity to another star. They would force humanity to admit that home is not only a place we inherit. Sometimes it is a system we maintain, a memory we protect, and a future we choose, even when the original map no longer fits. The starship begins as transportation. Then it becomes a birthplace. Then it becomes history. And if the people it carried survive, it becomes an ancestor. The final answer is not simple, because the outcome is not one thing. Humans born on a starship would be vulnerable. Their bodies would depend on artificial systems. Their choices would be shaped by ancestors. Their society would live under strict limits. Their childhoods would unfold inside metal, shielding, crops, recycled water, alarms, and carefully managed air. They might never see Earth. They might spend years preparing for a planet that turns out to be disappointing, dangerous, protected, or unreachable. They could also be extraordinary, not because they are better than Earth-born humans, but because they would grow up knowing survival as a shared project. They would understand that air is not free, that water is borrowed, that food is a system, that waste returns, that machines need care, that population matters, that knowledge can die, and that a society cannot pretend physics will forgive bad planning. If they reach a new system, they may become settlers, orbital citizens, habitat builders, scientists, archivists, pilots, farmers, doctors, engineers, artists, lawmakers, and parents under a star no human eye had seen up close before. Some may step onto a world their ancestors only named. Some may refuse to leave the ship. Some may build cities from local stone, ice, metal, and memory. Some may keep moving outward. The terrifying part is that none of this can be separated from childhood. A generation ship is not only a technology for crossing distance, it is a technology for creating people in transit. Once children are born aboard, the mission is no longer just about reaching a destination. It is about the rights, health, identity, and future of people whose entire world was designed by others. That makes the idea both powerful and dangerous. A starship could save human civilization from being trapped around one star. It could also create lives inside a journey so large that no single person can see its beginning and end. So what happens when humans are born on a starship? They become the mission. Not as cargo, not as passengers, not as replacements for the launch crew. They become the proof that humanity can turn a machine into a world, and also the warning that every world we build will shape the people who grow inside it. If they one day leave the ship, they will not simply be arriving at another star. They will be carrying the memory of a moving home into a place that never knew them. And whether they settle on a planet, live in orbit, or build new habitats from the dust and ice of another system, they will answer one of the oldest questions in a new way. Home is not only where humanity began, it is where life is protected long enough to become memory, culture, and choice. For the first humans born on a starship, that home may begin between the stars.